Well, welcome to the Brimstone Coaching Podcast. I'm Chris Godfredson. I'm co-founder and coach here at Brimstone Coaching Group, and I'm here today with my friend, partner, Kurt Bush. Good to see you today, Kurt.
Yeah, you too, Chris.
Yep. So we are looking forward to this conversation today. At least I am. I'm not sure if you are. I'm leading in. This isn't normal, but I get to lead in today, and it's probably appropriate given where we intend to go in the conversation today. And our contention is this, that every human being has an inner critic.
Mm,
Each of us has this voice that has the ability to knock us off center, to make us go sideways, to not show up in the world as our best selves. And I say it's probably appropriate that I lead off in it today because, like, my inner critic
mm,
uh, can be really strong.
mm.
And so, uh, yeah, what would you say as we dive into this conversation about the inner critic?
Yeah, that's a good question. I want to say a lot of things. I
Mm,
think, I mean, I love how you led in, and I just want to affirm again, I think this is a human condition. I don't think this
yeah.
is I don't think this is a condition of bad leadership or
Mm,
weak
yeah.
emotion. I think this is just part of what it means to be a human.
Mm,
Um, I had a client the other day. You and I have talked about this. The listener doesn't know this, but I had a client ask me, "Hey, how many people do you talk to that have some sort of strong inner critic?" Um, and I said, "All of them,
all
everyone,
of them. Yes. Yeah.
everyone, myself included." Yeah, when I think of the inner critic, like you, I think of that voice that's going to pop up at the most inopportune time, like
Mm,
at the time when I need to be most locked in, most focused, most attentive to what I'm doing. That inner critic pops in to say, "You're not going to be good at this, or you're going to screw this up, or you shouldn't be at this table,
mm.
or you
Why did you
shouldn't.
say that?
Why did you say that? Yes, you should have just
Mm,
stayed quiet. That was a dumb thing to say, right?" And that inner critic then just continues to stop me, unchecked, right? If left
yeah.
unchecked, will just continue to stop me in those circumstances.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So, uh, one of the reasons we're talking about this is we have a free resource available to you that Kurt will drop a link in the show notes for.
Yes.
We've written an ebook, and the intention here is to make this accessible to you. So we want to talk
Yeah.
about this today, but we also want to invite you to uh, click on that link and download the ebook Silencing the Inner Critic, Building a Mindset of Self-Compassion and Resilience.
Yeah.
We think that
Yeah.
these are the ways that can help us get unstuck from the inner critic.
Yeah.
And we're not going to spend a lot of time on talking about the solution today. We really want to talk about the power
Yeah.
of the inner critic. And when I use that phrase, the power of the inner critic, what does that stir in you?
Mm. Yeah. I mean, I think even just the word power stirs up a lot. I think the immediate thing that stirs in me is that something is happening to me.
Mm,
And I'm not sure that I like that that's the first thing that stirs, but I think what I hear is that inner critic is either going to do something or cause me to do something that I don't like or that I don't prefer.
yeah.
And with that power, I think stirs in me this idea that I really like I got to be on top of this or it's just going to happen automatically. Like it's just I'm going to do something because that's what I've always done. Right.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So it seems to be, as I listen to you answer the question, as I listen to you talk about this, that there is some form of autopilot that it exists or that helps the inner critic have its way. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. And I think maybe I don't know. I'm kind of doing this on the fly right now. I think maybe the autopilot feels like, or the default, I should say, feels like
Mm.
I at my most anxious or most vulnerable, I maybe believe the inner critic. That maybe
Mhm.
feels like the default, right?
Yeah,
Um, I don't know. I don't know that. I wonder, I should say, I wonder if the inner critic is ever going to go away. Much like we talk about anxiety or shame.
yeah,
I wonder if it's ever really going to be gone. But the default for me feels like that there are times where I actually believe it, um, versus standing up, metaphorically standing up to it and
yeah,
and and saying something else, right?
mm, yeah. What what's the impact of believing
Hmm.
the inner critic?
I mean, I think for me, the impact is I don't show up the way that I want. When I believe it, I don't say what I want to say or do what I want to do.
Yeah, yep.
Which leads to regret and remorse. Like
Mm,
we use those words
yeah, we do.
often. But I think, I can think of times or circumstances in my life where the inner critic is so loud and so strong, or has been so
Hmm.
loud that it actually begins to like impact how I think about myself.
Yes,
Um,
sir.
on a broader, like on a
Hmm.
global level, it actually begins to take hold as like this might be true, right?
Yeah.
Um, we say a lot, words have power, right?
Mhm.
And I think whether they're spoken words, like that's what's happening is I think when it's strongest, I think those words tend to start to influence how I think about myself.
Yeah, that's profound. And as you were saying that, I'm gonna let you off the hook just a little bit.
Please.
Yeah, but as you were saying that, uh, shame uh, was on the forefront of
Yeah.
my brain.
Yeah.
Like when I believe the inner critic, when I believe things about myself, then that I believe is where I experience and I feel a ton of shame. And
Yeah.
if you're new to the Brimstone Coaching Podcast, we would define shame. I would define shame this way. Guilt says I have done something bad.
Hmm.
Shame says I am bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and yeah, that inner critic, unchecked, can run roughshod
Yeah.
over my life, through my life, and make me believe the lie that
Yeah.
I am bad.
Yeah. 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 I mean, what else would you want to say about the power of the inner critic? Like what stirs in you when I say that there's power in the inner critic?
I think I want to say that, yeah, there are there are things alive in me, parts, even if you will. There are parts alive in
Yeah.
me that
Yeah.
really buy the lie.
Yeah.
In my
Yeah.
best thinking, when I can get up here and I really can think, I don't let my heart and my gut dictate. Even
Yeah.
when if I can get to 30,000 feet and I can look down on myself and really assess what's going on, then I can, with a clear mind, say, no, I'm not bad, or that wasn't dumb, or I'm not a
Yeah.
failure.
Yeah.
But when this inner critic is in charge, if you will, when my inner critic is driving the bus, I can't get separate from those
Yeah.
things. And the
Yeah.
power that it has, it just keeps me locked up. And I do any number of predictable things.
Yeah.
This is where, you know, I don't know. I can't even play back to you how you described it. But there are autopilot responses that I engage in
Yeah.
when the inner critic is doing its thing. When
Yeah.
the inner when and let me say it this way. I think there are things that I do automatically when I allow the inner critic to run roughshod.
Mm. Yeah.
I do believe that you and I and every human being, since this is a human condition, that
Yeah.
each one of us has agency in dealing with our own inner critics.
Yeah. Yeah. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I usually tell people when I say that, I usually tell
Yeah,
them, you can say no. You
I
can't
know.
say no.
No, I know that. I also know that's true. Both,
Yeah.
I know both things are true.
Do you have an example of this? Do you have an example of when your inner critic spoke up and felt really loud and you did one of those things that you do?
Yeah, that's a good question. Do I have an example? I think the example that I'll use, this goes back a number of years, but there was a time when I was running,
Mm,
and as I was running, like I built up to running 4 miles.
mm.
Whoop-de-doo, right?
Well, that's not nothing.
To you marathon runners out there. No, it's not nothing if you're me.
Yeah.
And like I had been going at this. I'm a Clydesdale. If you're just an audio listener, I'm not a marathon runner. But I was at a retreat with some other leaders, and uh, one of them knew that I had been running and said, "Hey, we're going to go out for a run in the morning. Would you like to go for a run?" And I said, "Yeah, I suppose I can do that." And so we got out there, and we're getting going, kind of easing into the run. And then these two guys, there were three of us running, me and these two guys that were talking about the marathons that they had run.
Yeah.
And I immediately went to, what is going on here? Actually, I
Yeah.
think I went to, let's go to the weight room. If you
Yeah.
want to embarrass me, I'm going to embarrass you. And
Yeah.
because like, boy, the inner critic's like, you suck.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't run with these guys. What is it that you're even doing? And
Yeah.
and I heard that conversation, and it wasn't long, and I was like, hey, you know what, guys? Why don't you go ahead?
Mm.
You can run at your pace, and I'll run mine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were gracious enough to accept that invitation
Mm.
for me to leave
Yeah.
me in the dust. But boy, uh, the all of the feelings swirled, the things I told myself the
Yeah.
rest of the day, like when I had to look them in the eye later,
Yeah.
because like, and hear me when I say it's okay that somebody else is a better runner than I am. They're
Yeah.
well conditioned and they can do what they do and do it well. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that isn't the problem, right?
Right.
The the problem was all of the meaning I made out of that experience. Because then that inner critic just like talks to me in ways that are not helpful. I had it in another instance. My brother-in-law is one of the best athletes I've ever
Mm.
been around, and we did a similar thing one day. We went for a run,
Mm.
and he blew my doors off, and I never ran again.
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
That was way before any of this work, and it
Yeah.
was true. The inner
Yeah.
critic was so strong. It's like, and I allowed the inner critic to end that for me. Now,
Yeah.
I've since can get on a bike and be just fine.
Yeah.
But boy, yeah. What would you,
Yeah.
anything stir you want to ask or
Yeah.
is, yeah.
Um, yeah. I wonder if you could say more. You named some impacts, so I'm not going to ask you what the impact was, but you talked about how later in the day in this example with these other guys running, when you said, "Hey, go run your own pace," you talked about having to look them in the eye later in the day.
Mhm.
I think I maybe want to highlight and ask you to say a little more about like this isn't just in the moment. Like your inner critic doesn't chime in when you're running, right? And then it just
No.
goes away. Like
Mhm.
you carried that beyond there, right?
Of course I did. Yeah. Yeah. Of course I did. And so self-deprecation was my shtick. And so I just had a little fun with myself. That inner critic would cause me to inflict uh,
Yeah.
pain on myself before you could hurt me.
Yeah. I wonder how many listeners just had this moment of like, oh man, I do the same
Mhm.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know I'm not alone. There are some of us that might not be a human condition. It might be, but there are a lot of us that
Yeah.
do that as a way of, I mean, all of this to a degree is how do we protect ourselves?
Yeah. Yeah. So when you talk about your inner critic causing you to do things that you do, that's what you mean, right? This
Yeah.
self-deprecating. This is your go-to, right?
Yeah. Yep.
To
Yes,
to
sir.
to keep yourself safe, to quiet the voice, right?
Yep.
Did it
And
work?
uh, I probably was so unaware at the time that it might have worked a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. It got me out of the uncomfortable moment with them. But I'll go back to your words. Like there was regret and remorse at
Yeah.
the end of the day when I, get to the end of the day and I spent a little time reflecting on all the things that had happened during that day. Yeah, it wasn't great.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not super effective.
Yeah. Yeah. I know there's a lot in the ebook that we're gonna save for the ebook. So
Yes,
so
sir.
I wanna choose my question here. Does that work today? Without giving all the solution, does self-deprecating work today?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No, and because I'm doing everything I can to choose not to
Yeah. Yeah.
self-deprecate.
Yeah.
Because I realize that my best thinking, uh, like I'm doing everything I can to not allow shame to rule and win the day. I'm not bad. The
Yeah.
fact that they could run marathons and I couldn't didn't make them great and made me bad. It just made us different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think yeah, wouldn't it be something if it was okay to be different?
Yeah. Yeah. Wouldn't that be
If
something?
it didn't have to put me in a category, and when I don't allow the inner critic to put me in a category that says
Yeah.
I suck.
Yeah. Now that feels profound.
Mm,
Actually, what you just said there feels like maybe the mic drop of the day of the inner critic puts you in a good bad
mm,
versus, without the inner critic, it just is.
yeah,
You are a different runner. The inner
yeah,
critic makes that something to be embarrassed of or upset about or frustrated with.
ashamed
Yeah,
of.
ashamed
Yeah,
of. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
that's really good, Chris.
Well, maybe this is a place we can take a short break and then we can come back and I can ask you if you have an example.
That sounds great. Let's take a break.
Do you sometimes feel like you're juggling too many things in your life? Things like your career, family, friendships, finances, or maybe even the anxious situation you woke up thinking about this morning? Hi, I'm Chris Godfredson with the Brimstone Coaching Group, and we understand how overwhelming these feelings can be. And we believe that the first step toward your personal transformation is taking time to reflect on what's really going on. That's why we offer you a free personal assessment to help you evaluate these key areas of your life. Areas like your work, relationships, and what may be causing you anxiety and holding you back. Our easy to use assessment is designed to help you reflect on those challenges and to guide you towards a life of contentment, fulfillment, and wholeness. Download your free personal assessment today at brimstonecoachinggroup.com to start your journey toward reflection and transformation. Again, visit brimstonecoachinggroup.com to request your copy today.
Welcome back to the Brimstone Coaching Podcast. Chris Godfredson here with Kurt Busch, and we're talking today about the inner critic and the power that the inner critic has as part of the human condition. And so far, it's been an enlightening conversation, at least for me, I think. And
Yeah.
as we went to break, I said that I wanted to ask you a question, and the question is this: do you have an example in your own life of the inner critic and the power that it has?
Yeah. Sorry, I chuckle. I chuckle because it was yesterday. And the inner critic in me now is saying, "Hey, I have a coaching practice and I'm on this podcast to talk about how to defeat the inner critic, and I'm about to tell the world that I actually had an experience like this yesterday."
Well,
Uh,
I
but
think that
hey,
gives the world hope.
the work continues, right? The
Yeah,
work
right.
never ends.
It's not some destination we arrive at. We're
No.
very clear about this all the time, and we haven't been yet today. So, like the inner critic, we can uh, tame the inner critic, but
Yeah.
we don't always have victory
Yeah.
over. It just doesn't go away.
Yeah, yeah, and different circumstances make the inner critic speak up differently,
Yes,
uh,
sir.
w- which is my example. Chris, you and I have been working on a project for a little while that we feel really good about. A
Hmm.
project that we've put a lot of time into, um, and it's time in the project to start getting it in front of some other people, getting other eyeballs on it.
Yeah,
And you yesterday, was it yesterday? I think it was.
it
So
was. It was.
yesterday, as we're recording this,
Yep.
you sent me a text message and said, "Hey, what if we put this project in front of this person who's a mutual friend of ours, someone that we both look up to, someone that we would say in our field is a colleague that's at the top of
It was an
um,
expert.
an
Yeah.
expert in our field."
Yeah.
Um, and immediately I'm like, yes, let's do it. That'd be great. I would love for this person that I have such deep respect for to see this thing that I've poured my heart into.
Hmm.
Um, your next message was, do you want to reach out to him or do you want me? And
Yes.
I went, oh.
Will you? That's
I
what
think
I
it
got
was
back.
I think it was just a will you. Yeah. And the reality is that the will you was this moment when I thought about going to this person again who's an expert that I love, that I think loves us, I think cares for
Hmm.
us deeply. The thought of giving this person this project that I've poured my heart into, the thought of that stirred up this inner critic that said, "You don't belong in the same
Hmm.
conversation as this person. You don't have the clout, if you will, or the
Yeah.
knowledge or the expertise to even consider asking this person to look at this project that you've poured
Yeah.
into." Um, and I believed it in that moment, right? Because
Hmm.
this is an inner critic voice that for me
Yep.
has been there for years, just years of feeling that there are people up here, and then there's me, right? And there's a lot of levels to that. There's a lot of
Yeah.
unpacking, but that inner critic in that moment said that person is way up here. You, Kurt, have no have no right
Yeah.
to even think about it, going into that other sphere with this person that I care deeply for. Um, I think here's what I know is true. That inner critic spoke up, and it was loud, and I believed it for a minute, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Um, and then I sent you a text message and said, "Hey, here's what's going on," because I needed to send that text message.
Yeah.
Um, I needed to name it because I know
Hmm.
it's not true, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I know intellectually that this person is a huge cheerleader for us,
Hmm.
that cares deeply for both of us, that
Yep.
desires all the best for us,
Yeah. Yep.
um, and I know that to be true.
And
But
we'll
it
give honest feedback.
and we'll give honest feedback, yes, which we want.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is not a, my kid would use the word glazing. This is not
Hmm.
a glazing inquiry. This is not a tell
Okay.
us how good we are.
Yeah. Right.
Like we want the feedback. So I think I knew those things intellectually, but
Yeah.
something, to use your words, something in me felt the need to protect. And
Yeah.
and what that protection was is, I don't think I want to be a part of this.
So
So
it's interesting, right? I mean, the immediate response was, yeah, that's a good idea.
yes,
And and then when I fired back to say, well, who among us shall do this? And you say, will you?
yeah,
Uh, that, it was like, yes. And
yeah,
then the inner critic got to work. He's like,
yeah,
it was lying dormant.
yes,
He, if we're on the hamster wheels, like, okay, then he started
right,
pedaling and now we start to go and, oh,
yeah,
you don't feel safe,
yeah,
right? And so to get back to safety, it's will you? Um,
yeah,
and and I'm like, yeah, okay. So and I can't remember, right? So I'm watching the dots on my phone
yeah.
to see if did you start responding before uh,
I'm gonna
I
look
asked the
right now.
question, or did you be or was the question did the question help
You,
quiet the inner critic?
I said, would you? And you said, sure, dot, dot, dot. Is there something you're avoiding? Followed by an I'm playing, which I knew you were playing.
Yeah, yeah.
Like and I know that you would ask me that question. So even though I knew you were playing, I answered the question
Yeah,
because I knew there was more.
right.
Um,
Because you're aware
yes,
of the critic.
yes.
Yeah.
So I think what I want to say is, uh, Kurt from years ago,
Mhm.
before this work, would have just said, I can't do that. And I would have never owned it or been aware of it or changed it. Now,
Yes, sir.
I didn't come back and say, yeah, Chris, I'm definitely going to reach out to this guy because I'm still dealing with some of the impact,
Hmm.
right? But Kurt today that's doing the work knows I don't want that to be my answer, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Kurt today knows I do not want to let this feeling of not being enough dictate what I do with this project we've been working on, right?
Yes.
That you
Yep.
and I have poured our hearts into. I
Yeah.
don't want this shame to be the thing
Mm,
that comes in the way of it. So I count it as a victory.
yeah.
um, and there's still work to do, right?
Right. Yeah. I
Yep.
think your response was getting there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, yeah, the because this is the thing about the power of the inner critic. I think the thing that the beliefs, the thoughts, the feelings that we have that the inner critic pushes out into the world that creates our way of being is often not at all accurate. It's not
Yeah.
what the world sees.
Yeah.
Because I think my comment was something like, if only you could see you the way I see you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because you do belong in the same plane as the person that we reached out to. You
Yeah.
are on the same plane. And but boy, that the power of that critic
Yeah.
would do
Yeah.
everything it can to keep us stuck and stopped.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that there's, if we infuse just a little parts conversation, like there are
Mhm.
parts of us today that would say, uh, yeah, that the inner critic is that might be true,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's protecting us from some place where we were deeply hurt
Yeah.
in our first formation, and
Yeah.
because we've exiled that part to a place where it does not have to feel the things that it felt long ago. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
the protector in us just says, nope, uh,
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
don't do it. Don't engage.
Yeah.
You can't engage.
Yep.
Don't send
Yep.
that to somebody else to consider.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I think even just as I'm hearing you talk, like I'm struck by your words earlier where you talk about the inner critic making something bad or shameful. I mean, I think the same is true that this person that we're sending our project to give feedback on is further along in all of the things that we want
Yeah.
to grow in, right?
Mhm.
Um, which is all really positive to have a resource like this to learn from. But that inner critic made it automatically, quickly shameful, right?
Yeah.
It made this interaction go from positive and beneficial for our practice and our
Mhm.
business and our
Yep.
lives, frankly, our own growth,
Yeah.
um, turned it into something for me that was something to be avoided and protected against, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. No, that's really good.
Oof.
Thanks for saying all that.
Well, I think you said it all. Thanks for saying that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how do we want to start landing the plane here on the inner critic, Chris?
That's a
What
great
else
question.
what else do you want to say about the
Mm,
inner critic?
yeah. I think what I want to say about the inner critic is that it doesn't have to hold sway. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to have the power that we allow it to have. And we are here to help you work through that. We are here to help you understand that there are other ways of being.
Yeah.
And we know this is true because we found them.
Yeah.
Somebody showed us the way. Somebody
Yeah.
showed us the path. You were clear in our last episode, like nobody knows until they know.
Yeah.
Nobody knows how to do it until we know how to do it. And
Yeah.
we have found ways, pathways, if you will, to uh, defeat or to put the inner critic in its rightful place.
Yeah.
Not even to shame the
Yeah.
critic, but just to be able to say, you know what? Thanks for helping. Thanks for
Yeah.
trying. I see what you're doing. I
Yeah.
understand it. I don't have to like beat myself up for having an inner critic. I could just say, I have an inner critic, and so do you. Welcome to the human race.
Yeah.
And because we have this inner critic, we also, and as it performs its function, there might be times where it's a good warning, like,
Yeah.
oh, because maybe it's just my conscience.
Yeah.
I think the
Yeah.
inner critic is the one who all of a sudden is uh, seeing danger, danger, and is going to do whatever it can to keep me
Yeah.
stuck and stopped and protected. And I don't always need to be protected anymore. I think there was a time when I did,
Yeah.
and I don't need the protection. I can rightly say, okay, I see you. Thanks for the effort. And this is how I want to show up today. and
Yeah.
and allow other ways of being like self-compassion and resilience to let those things provide the path down, down whatever it is towards
Yeah.
looking two guys in the face who just like when I said, you know what, I'm okay, you guys go ahead, I'll find my way back, and they went and they
Yeah.
just took off running. um I can see them later in the day and not have to
Yeah.
think I'm bad.
Yeah.
Or you can send this project off to a colleague, a respected friend who cares without all of the feelings that come with the inner critic.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to add anything to that. Um,
Okay.
I love, I mean, the way you talked about not shaming the inner critic, I maybe just want to make sure, listener, if you didn't catch that, hit the previous 15
Let's
second
go
button like
back.
5 times. I think that just feels like such gold to talk to bring the internal family systems conversation into it to say, the inner critic is probably trying to help us, is definitely trying to help us.
Yeah.
Um, and being kind and compassionate to that inner critic. That is so good, Chris. So
I
good.
think it's going to get it. I think it helps move the needle.
Yeah.
And And that is the objective. That's the goal
Yeah.
for each one of us, is to be able to, to identify, well, that's my inner critic.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now ask the question, what is the inner critic trying to do?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what is its intent and purpose? And if we can get clear on that, then we can make decisions about how we're going to behave
Yeah.
as a result of what the inner critic is saying and doing. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. There are times where we might need to listen to the inner critic to the point that it's alerting us to something that we need to pay attention to. Right.
Yeah, those are the words that I was going to use. Is
Yeah.
I think if we pay attention to the inner critic, assess what it is that it's attempting to do to protect us from, if we can think about it that way, if
Yeah.
the inner critic is actually trying to protect us from something, and when we aren't aware of it, that's when its power is exacerbated,
Yeah.
then if we're aware that it's just trying to protect you,
Yeah. Yeah.
then okay, we can treat that feeling with compassion.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think we can engage self-compassion that leads to resilience.
Yeah. That's really good. I think I want to wrap us there.
Yeah, that's good.
I think I want to say one more time, Chris, you said it earlier. We have a free downloadable resource online. The link for that free downloadable resource to get more at sort of the practical ways to approach and address the inner critic. That's all included in this free downloadable ebook. The link for that is below. Please, please, please go check that out. That's going to get into much more of the practical solutions and tips and practices than
Yeah,
we got here. So please go check that out. Um, yeah, as always, if you listener are hearing this and thinking, yeah, you know what, this is something that feels pretty loud in my life, which again I think makes you human. Um, but if you're feeling like you don't know what to do or how to take a step to address some of this or how to identify the impact of the inner critic, we would absolutely love to help you process some of that. Chris, how does someone get a hold of us if they want to take that next step to do that work with us?
they can log into www.brimstonecoachinggroup.com. They can click on one of the buttons that says schedule an initial call or a free inquiry, and then we will have a conversation about um, what coaching might look like. When you do that, when you click on that free initial inquiry, that will trigger a free personal assessment that is sent to you. And that is an opportunity for you to assess before we even have a conversation if there's a place that you'd like to explore in your life. And like the inner critic has sway over my work life, my home life, my relationships, my
Yeah,
recreation, all those things. And so the free personal assessment is a means to an end to initiate a conversation. But
yeah,
ultimately, like we really want to help you get free of that inner critic so that you can
yeah,
rightly assess it
yeah,
and then exercise some self-compassion
yeah,
and be
yeah.
resilient.
I heard you say free a lot. I think it's just worth saying how much we desire the world to change. We desire
Yeah.
transformation in all the people we work with, and all of these initial conversations are free. The downloadable guide is free because we really do believe that this work is worth doing. So we would love to talk if you're hearing this and feeling like you want to take a couple steps.
Kurt, thanks for the conversation today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Chris.